The following is an interview with Thomas Waite, owner of the In-Home Chef. Him and his partner Sam have created one of the most incredible culinary and entertaining experiences in southwestern Ontario. I've known Thomas for over 20 years at this point, and his passion, his curiosity when it comes to food and the science of experience is why I wanted to sit down with him today. We get into all things business from start to finish, how failure, team building, growth, opportunity have all impacted him as an entrepreneur. I like people to get inspiration for many, many different places, take the tools and bring them into their own life to become more complete humans, and I hope you enjoy this. It's funny because that conversation we were just having about saying yes to the right people and saying no to the wrong people, we both come from a place where we just used to have to hustle for our business, say yes to everything. Why don't we start there? What was the origin story of the In-Home Chef?
Oh gosh, well yeah, the In-Home Chef started 11 years ago, and it just kind of happened. I was working in restaurants, since you've known me, since I was born, I wanted to be a chef. So,
well, let's start there. Like, when you were a kid, where did becoming a chef pop in your head? Because it wasn't as popular as it is now, right? Back then?
No, I grew up with severe learning disabilities. Nobody in my family was a cook, chef, restaurant person. Nobody.
I thought you were going to be the story. I thought he was going to say that. His
No,
dad's off camera, just so you guys know.
But no, it just, with my, my learning disabilities, food was the thing that kept my hands busy. And my parents kind of never stopped me from doing that. I was mixing sawdust with water to try to make burgers for my dad, and cutting food out of construction paper and opening restaurants in my basement. And yeah, it just kept my mind busy and geared my high school towards it. Went to culinary school. I started working at Joe Cool's and Jim Bob's.
That's right. I remember.
Never in the kitchen. I only worked in there for a couple of months.
You were a great barback, though.
I couldn't work in the kitchen. Yeah. The Curtis, Paul, those guys,
crazy.
They treated me like a younger brother, and it was the worst of the worst. So I was like, no. So, but bar backing, bartending, that kept me kind of in the industry. And then went to Fanshawe for a culinary program. And then, one of the youngest in Ontario at 23, took my chef papers and never looked back. When I graduated, I started a guy I met that I worked with at Riverbend. We talked about doing a business together. Mm-hmm. And then he brought in another guy. We did one event together that I put together and ended up doing all the work for. And then they got into it over a woman. Yeah. And I was like, well, I've done all this work. I want to kind of do my own thing. Sure. And then kind of the In-Home Chef was created.
And the In-Home Chef was personal catering? You incorporated it with the idea of going into people's houses?
It was always kind of in people's homes. Yeah. I was like, I like that because I could create the menu. It was always different. Yeah. I got to see the people's reaction. It wasn't like a restaurant. Yeah. And that in a restaurant, you had to do the same thing over and over again. And then when I was kind of doing that part-time, I worked at several different restaurants. I opened 4 restaurants for other people. And then one of the owners gave me an ultimatum. And it was just basically, hey, well, you're going to concentrate on the In-Home Chef, or you're going to just not and be here full-time. And I'm like, well, I'm here full-time already. I'm like, it's not interfering. But I was like, nobody's going to give me an ultimatum. Yeah. So I pulled the trigger, quit. And then I ran the In-Home Chef full time, and I doubled the business every year. So I worked out of my own little small home that you helped me. Or actually, no, sorry, it was Greg Rains, kind of a friend of both of ours, and then I started doing things out of that house. It was EOA and had an apartment-sized fridge, and I did about 168 events in the 1 year. And thankful to my parents, because my parents have been my rock, and they've been there for me every step of the way. And I was like, well, I need a commercial kitchen.
Sure.
And so then my dad's like, well, why don't you open a restaurant? It's been your dream. So then I talked to you, and then, you know, that all started happening. And then you got me 731 Wellington Street, which turned into Spruce, my restaurant I had. And then kind of still wasn't able to do the catering out of there because the restaurant was busy. So I kept still doing things out of my house on Inkerman Street. And then, then kind of, you know, what a lot of us kind of learn and do. And the restaurant wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
You know, I've failed a lot in my life, but I don't believe in the word like that there were failures, because you learn as you go. And
well, I think as you tell the story, there's a natural curiosity kind of every step of the way when it comes to food that's very different from your average business owner or chef, right? And I think sometimes you go down the natural path of thinking, well, now I open a restaurant because that's what people do in my business. When in reality, I think you were searching for something else, right? And I think a lot of people say watching this show or that listen to it, they're like you and I. We're like, they're different than kind of the status quo. And it's okay to go search for stuff where it's not a failure because you would have never known where your passions lie unless you did the thing that you realized wasn't in alignment with it, and then search for that thing, right? That natural curiosity and like the art and the math behind feeding yourself and your family and being able to take care of them while pouring into the natural curiosity you have for like people's reaction to food. And like, I consider you the mad scientist when it comes to food creation. You just showed me the lab you're building upstairs, this compound and everything else. Rolling it back to when you were a child, when it came to food, was there something inherent about food that you just understood maybe different than school, or like how it interacted with people? Like what are you curious about when it comes to people's reactions?
I'd say like when I was young, it was just the thought that I could take something so simple and turn it into something amazing.
Okay. Like ingredients or something.
Ingredient wise, you know, like I always go back to a tomato. A tomato, you go to your garden, take it off, you can bite that tomato and eat an amazing fresh tomato. Great with nothing on it. Or you can take that tomato and, you know, slice it, put it between two pieces of sourdough with a little bit of salt, olive oil. Tastes amazing. You can cook it down for 10 hours in a sauce, and, you know, the natural sugar comes out of it, the sweetness, like, you know, you pair it in a salad, like, just something like that of like, oh, okay, like I can just take something and use my hands and add this and that, and like, wow, okay. And so just...
And then throw garlic in there, and then all of a sudden, like, take
changes
two or three things
the complexity.
Endless possibilities, right?
Yes, and so it's kind of taking that and kind of learn as you go. Like I always say, Eric Repair, one of my favorite chefs I look up to, he owns Le Bernardin and all that. He always said, he's like, the day my head can't fit in my own kitchen doors, I'll stop cooking. You'll never know everything. Like I know 1%. You know, like it's... You're always learning. The things that are big yesterday are gone today. In a lot of industries are like that nowadays.
Dude, even the videos, like this stuff that we do, like I get so annoyed watching podcasts that are like canned and scripted and like, hey, this is the intro and like a hook to get you. Like I just want to have a conversation. Like I don't even want to interview just real estate agents. That's what people in my industry do. I want real estate agents to be inspired by people like you and see like you can look at real estate the same way. Like how do you do a listing video? How do you do marketing? How do you talk to human beings? Communication evolves using AI. Like the methodology of how we do things is always constantly evolving. But that piece you said, that the chef said about not ever wanting to be in a place where his head's too big to fit in his own doors, I think that's one of the biggest success traps that happens in our industry, but in probably the restaurant industry as well, right?
Well, yeah, it's you know, when you get a name or something like that, and then people recognize you, and it just goes from that. And it all goes to your head. And the thing for me is I always tell myself, like, I haven't achieved anything yet. And, you know, I am very fortunate for everything I have in my life and where I am. And
pretty nice spot.
And for what I do have and the people that I've had in my life that have worked for me, that I've worked with, that have inspired me, that have pushed me. You know, that it's like I still tell myself, like, hey, like, okay, you got this property and all this, but it can be gone tomorrow. So put your head down, keep working as hard as you can. And like I said, like I have made mistakes with employees, with suppliers, with clients, and I will continue making mistakes here and there, but I try to fix those and repair them and learn from them and try to be a better cook, a better chef, a better employer, a better son, a better friend, a better husband. And it's a continuous battle, to be better.
Yeah, I think I posted on Twitter this morning, saw a quote that I read in a book called The Culture Solution. I'll buy it for you. Phenomenal book. Make a note of that so that I can give him a copy. And the quote in it was, in today's society, people are allergic to accountability, right? And, they're obsessed or addicted to instant gratification. And I think building a team and running an organization, working hard and getting into a leadership position, there's this natural thing that comes into play where when things don't work out with partners, suppliers, clients, or even employees, it's easy to sit down and blame the other person. But what you just did was an example of, well, how can I improve? Like, how can I take a positive lesson from an interaction that somebody may deem as negative, but it's only negative if they look at it in that light? Because sometimes you're in alignment with people at that time and place in your business. And if you realize what brings you joy and what you're searching towards is going to be in a different direction as that person, that's not a negative thing that you're not working with that person anymore. It's actually a positive for both of you, because that person needs to find what makes them happy. You need to find what makes you happy. And there's a balance to that. How do you balance relationships and keeping good people around you, given that everybody has obviously different ambitions?
That's I think the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. You can be the best you can be and have empathy and care for your staff and clients and all that, but it only takes you to a certain place.
Yeah.
You have to get something back from them, because you can't keep giving and giving and giving and not getting anything back. The biggest thing for me, especially that the last couple of years, and having a son now and all that, is what is important to me, and what I really want out of life. I saw this thing actually on Shark Tank, and a guy was there with another younger gentleman, and he had said he put in close to $700,000 of his own money into the business. And they're like, wow, that's a lot of money. And he had said, he's like, well, I've been through a lot of my life, and he said, I don't want to run the business. I want to make people's lives better. And he's like, time is a commodity that you can't buy. And that hit me really hard, because I don't think of that way. Like life is so short. Like, we lost my wife Samantha, her mom, suddenly, be almost 3 years ago now, and she was 54, 54 I believe. No reasoning, just it was her time. And it's like, man, like, I'm 36, so you're telling me that I got 18 more years, I think. I'm not good at math, but you're telling me I got 18 more years possibly, or I could have, maybe I'm gone tomorrow. And that no matter how busy we get and how big we get and expand and money we make and all that, it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And the relationships I want and the direction I want my life to go into is to be a better husband and a father and a friend and a son and a brother. In our industry, like you were in my industry for years and years, and the sacrifice and the things it takes to stay in this industry, to make it your career, is a lot. Birthdays you miss everybody's birthday, you miss Christmases, you miss big events. And now it's like, what is it for? And I've lost friends, and I've damaged relationships with friends. And so now at 36, it's like, that's what is important to me. I want to see my son grow up. I want to be the coach of his team.
Sure.
You know, I want to be there. I grew up with my parents and my brother, and we were the family meal. We were always the earliest out of all my friends. 5:30, dinner was on the table. We talked about my dad's day at work.
Yeah.
We talked about our school. It was baseball practice. It was this, it was that. And if I continue the way, I'm you know, working 16, 17-hour days. I won't be able to be there, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, trying to figure out the business of where I want it to go. You know, like we've talked about of, okay, well, is it like, do you want to expand, or do you want to kind of keep what you got, but just make it better?
Yeah.
You know, do you want to have 400 agents that work for you? Do I want to have, you know, 10 food trucks and 4 venues and this and this and this? No, I don't.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because the conversation that I think about is, in our zone of genius, or the thing that I truly enjoy to do, is the art side of my job, where I think I over-index on value, is how we present things to the world is unlike anybody else. And that's what I want people to know me for, is you bring me this property, I'm going to showcase it with media in a way that nobody's ever seen, draw out the emotion in the sale, see people's reaction to it, and over-index on value for you, because you want as much money as possible for it.
Yes.
I'm not super interested in managing people and having a million offices and a million agents, because I know if I focus on that inherent skill that I have, that I over-index on value on, I could probably even make more money than I would if I had 400 agents across the country, because the margin of running a business of that scale, it gets diluted, and then you end up with boards and ownerships and partnerships. And again, what you said, time, and even more so, attention is your most valuable asset. If that's starting to take attention from me being able to go fishing with my daughter, take her to the beach, go watch a sunset, I'm happy to walk that line, but it's the discovery of going through seasons and almost stepping into that world, realizing that, no, I'm going to step back. I think the biggest challenge you're going to face is you care so much about the quality of what you do. It's how do you delegate and inspect what you expect from the organization that you have. So I personally think you'll find somebody else that is maybe within your organization already that will step up into a position and be able to deliver like you would deliver on it. And your highest value proposition is actually stepping back for a second, looking at the whole scope of the event, and then really getting your hands into the science piece of it and the experience, and then letting your team actually run it, and you not being the one that's got your hand in the sauce. That is going to be the hardest thing for you, because I'm going through that season now. My team is killing it, and we're constantly going back and inspecting what we expect and reviewing our standard operating procedures, but it's always this balance of like, but nobody can do it like Justin, just like you're going to be like, there's nobody that can do it like Tommy, right?
Yeah, and especially for like in-home catering, it's when people hire us at times, it's just like, oh, I thought Thomas was going to be here. And it's just like, yes, like, you know, like I'm not the only in-home chef, like we have a team, and but yeah, it's like for me, it's like the biggest part is over the last couple of years of just growing and what we've done here, it's like I haven't been able to be in the kitchen as much. And that's the thing I don't want to lose. I got in the industry because I love to cook. I didn't get in it for money. I didn't get into for it to, like you said, to
get a TV show or get your name on it.
I got into it because like I absolutely love working with food, and I love being in the kitchen. And like one of my main mentors, Kirk Weiss, always would say when he'd bring in some unique ingredients, he'd always say like quiver. He would quiver over like a new ingredient, you know, or like, oh my God,
the excitement of what he could do with
yeah,
it.
like right? look what just came in, and it's like,
what type of ingredient makes you feel like that?
For me, it's like honestly, like we got in some we use like I'm not afraid of spending money.
Sure.
I'm not afraid of spending money on good stuff. Things that I've never used before, I'm like, okay, let's bring it in. Let's see what we can do with it.
What's it like? Meat?
You know, well, no, for example, like mushroom season.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so
heard of truffle season's crazy. Right?
Well, truffles, like I love truffles and everything like that. But like we got in maybe a month ago, we got in close to $800 of chanterelles, morels, and porcinis. And you know, you're only looking at maybe 15 pounds of mushrooms. You know, the chanterelles were not in season yet for BC and all that, so these came from oh gosh, Europe somewhere.
Sure.
Got in some white asparagus from France before the white
Yeah.
season started here.
Interesting.
You know, and
I think
so
probably has a different flavor because of the earth that it grew in and where it was.
100%, right? And so it's like bring those in, and it's just like, okay, just spend all this money. What can we do with it?
Yeah.
Can we pickle them? Can we confit them? Can we dehydrate them and then pulse them into a powder? And then we can put the powder on a piece of beef or mix it with this, or so many different things. And, you know, there's waste, you know, that in our industry. And my gosh, like, you know, I hate wasting, but we end up sometimes getting so busy that it's like, well, didn't get to use that and, you know, whatever. But like, we would quiver over an ingredient,
Sure.
you know, and so that's the thing that really hurts my soul and has really kind of bothered me the last couple of years, because it's like we're growing, and it's like, okay, like I need to be in the kitchen,
Sure.
and it's hard because you are managing, you know, how many servers and how many chefs and cooks and this and people's schedules, and then, you know, it's not like we have investors that we have accountants and, you know, social media people and
Sure.
different managers and all that. And so it's like, you know, like I'm doing the prep lists, I'm doing the scheduling, I'm doing the ordering, you know, and then dealing with clients, and Samantha's doing all the emails and the contracts and going through things. And then it's like, oh, with the property, it's like, okay, well, the landscaper called in.
Managing construction.
Right, yeah, the landscaper called in sick. Okay, well, there goes 3 hours of my time because I got to cut the lawn now, and I got to weed eat. Oh, we have to till the gardens because the other guys that we have doing that, they can't make it, you know. And so it's the things that people don't see.
Sure.
And I don't even mean the clients, I mean the staff too. That they just think of like, oh, like
It just happens.
you must be, yeah. The amount of times we had a staff meeting, and the one server that was been working for us last season, he's like, oh, looks like you made a lot of money, eh? And I'm like, what do you? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, look at the suit you're wearing and the shoes you're wearing. I'm like, nope. But it's what people see.
Yeah.
And it's just like, even when I had my restaurant, they're like, oh, somebody's like, oh yeah, you must be rolling in it now, eh? And I'm like, I'm actually losing more money. Like everyone thinks you make so much, and it's like, no. The more, and everyone thinks the more you do, the more money you make. No, that is not true. Especially what we do, it can cost more because I need more staff. I need this, and my time is used up more. And so, circling back, of me being in the kitchen, that's the thing. It's like,
yeah. But all those things are
distractions.
minute distractions of like getting back to the art of it, right?
And it hurts me. It hurts my soul.
Yeah.
That because like I want to cook. I want to be in the kitchen. I want to, you know, I live 100 yards
Sure.
from the kitchen we built, and I want to be in that kitchen, and I want to see, you know, I want to be able to walk in and cook and just, yeah.
Get back to the art of it. So there's a book,
Yes.
Another book called The War of Art, where it talks about, doesn't matter if you're a musician, a chef, real estate agent, salesperson, contractor, the art of what you do is literally just showing up every single day. The waste that you talked about, that's what I was thinking about while you were saying the waste. I'm like, the waste. It's not really a waste because you would never discover the thing without putting in the effort. And like, if you got to burn off 70% of the asparagus to get 30% of something that is entirely unique
I agree.
and one of one, I think
Yep.
the business is the same thing, where, you know, a lot of times people that are on the other side of it, they definitely don't see it, right? Like I had this conversation with one of our agents, and we were talking about like a net effective deal. And, you know, a lot of times when I work with my partners at Prime, we collaborate on a file. A lot of times the relationships are like ours, where we have a relationship for 20 years. So you call me to execute on something for you. If it's a specialist that you need that's on my team and I bring in that specialist, we're working on it together. And when I explain to them the dynamics of what that may look like and send them out to do the work they need to do, sometimes over-indexing on the explanation of like, hey, fun fact, I know you think you're doing all this running around, but the work and the hundreds of hours that went into building that trust and that relationship on top of running the business, the margin on every dollar I'm making versus every dollar you're making is actually skewed the other way. Like you're getting to keep every dollar that you're making, where I'm going to reinvest that into my company. but you only know that if you're on the ownership side, which I think is something that you've always been really aware of. And I like that you've actually been thoughtful about it, because you work really hard to generate capital, but at the same time, you invest in two other resources a lot of people overlook, because there's only three things you have. Both you and I, when we started our business, had time, and that's pretty much it.
Yep.
I had no skill, I had no money.
Yeah.
You invested time to get the skill, you applied the skill to get some money, and then you reinvested the money to buy back some time. And I think those three things, time, skill, and money, it's that constant flow where you may get to a point where, if I think about all the things you mentioned, I'm like, I could hook you up with a part-time assistant company that I use to help you just manage your projects and like talk to all of the people.
Yeah.
And then just come to you once a day and say, this is everything that's happening and this is how it's all happening. Are you okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
So that you can get back in the kitchen. Again, that comes with you saying, you know what, I'm okay to sacrifice a little bit of this money to buy back that time so that I can spend it with my family. And I would argue you would be a more effective entrepreneur down the road, because if you're in a great place from a heart and a head space, a family space, a personal development space, the money comes naturally and feels effortless because the top are completely taken care of.
Yeah.
Where the cycle that we're all in is always, and the way I look at it is faith, fitness, family, fun, finances. If my heart's not right with God, then I'm not in a place where I'm going to be there to serve my family.
Yeah.
If I'm not taking care of my wife, I'm going to be distracted during my workout. If my wife's upset at me, I'm not going to have a good time fishing.
Yeah.
And then if all four of those are out of whack, my fitness, my family, my faith, my fun, I'm going to be miserable at work. I'm going to hate my work because I'm going to be in the kitchen being like, I can't go fishing. I can't be with my family. And I think it's a breakthrough that's happened in the last couple of years, where people like you and other people on this podcast, the reason I don't just have real estate agents or just marketing people and there's no like specific type of avatar, is I look for the prime people that are like craftsmen in what they do. It could be a chef, it could be a real estate salesperson, it could be somebody that's amazing at digital marketing, but they know the craft that they're searching for, and I think they're willing to apply themselves consistently for a long enough time to become unique to their industry, and I think you've done that in a huge way.
I appreciate that. And it's funny, it's like the older you get, the more a lot of people don't realize these things, right?
Yeah.
And
well, on the come up, you don't have any of that. You don't like,
you don't.
The family's not there, and you're like, I got a giant fridge in my kitchen. I got whatever. Like, you work till whatever hour just to put in the work and grind, right? But then you come back and you're like, okay, this is evolution. So you've gone now. You had Spruce. You found yourself. What was that evolution from Spruce to where you're at now? Because I think that's a huge part of your story.
Yeah, like Spruce was, I thought Spruce was going to be a lot of things.
Yeah.
And as we went on, I was losing my passion. It wasn't.
It's a different business, right?
It's a totally different business, and I didn't have any backers. I didn't have anybody feeding me money that I could keep doing things.
Sure.
If we were out of this, I had to go buy it. I had to do this, I had to do that. Where something was out, a light bulb was out, I changed the light bulb. And
meanwhile, running another company in the background, right?
Yeah, it's still doing in-home stuff, and having different people come and go, and then trying to figure that all out and
just get that consistency piece, right?
And at the end of it, it was just like, what am I doing? I was losing my passion, and that was the first thing. I was like, I got into this because it's my passion. I'm losing it. Why am I willing to lose my passion and lose why I got into this? Like, what are you doing? And so it was more of like, you know what? I'm done. Close the restaurant. Let's turn it into the headquarters, kind of for the in-home chef, which is your baby. And we'll do pop-ups. We'll do cooking classes. And then, we started with that.
But I think there was something with that piece where it was still a commercial building, right? And I think if I go back to the inception of your story, the in-home chef, when you ended up here, this feels natural. Like, this feels like it should have been that you're bringing people home. This was my end all,
yeah.
Where like you went into what the world would expect is a commercial building, where I'm walking into a business which you tried to make feel like people's homes, when in reality you needed to bring people home to you, right?
And that's my goal, because like, it's when you stand, like when I've been standing back and really thinking, it's like, what have I been doing for 11 years full time? I've been running the In-Home Chef full time for 11 years. And it's like, okay, what is your end game? You know, and it hits me at times of like, well, this was your end game.
Yeah.
Like, you have a 4-acre property, you live 100 yards from where you work, you built your full commercial kitchen, and you can bring people here to your home. And, you know, we've been doing pop-ups. We have our cooking classes starting. We have a market we're opening up. And it's like, well, this was your end all. And so having Spruce turning into the headquarters of the In-Home Chef, and then leaving that to do another business that not a lot of people know about, but I was approached by another businessman and to take over his business and all that. And that, you know, blew up in my face. And that was a huge business personal learning experience, losing financially, losing big time and being taken advantage of.
It's happened to me too.
You know, and
so, you know, in partnerships like I can go back and tell you stories that would turn your face white.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have two choices. You either sit back and sulk, or you turn around and you take it as a lesson, and you're like, you know what, this is going to save me from something in the future, so thank you. As hard as it is sometimes to go through
to be the bigger person,
but you get nothing by hanging on.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I see that person here and there, and it's like, you know, that really hurt at that time.
Sure.
And I'm like, why would you do that when, you know, I believe I'm a good man, and I try to do my best, and you took advantage
Sure.
and you did that on purpose. That was your whole, in the beginning, that was your whole game plan. And then, you know, but yeah, it's like I could sit back and be like, man, why me? Like, woe is me.
Sure.
Or it's like, you know, I believe in karma. Hey,
Use it as fuel.
yeah, you know what? It was a big loss, but hey, look what you have now, and just keep on moving. And, you know, I believe God has a plan for everybody, and I believe in karma. And yeah, so now
This property, can you explain the acquisition and what it's developed into right now? Because it did not look like this when you bought the property.
No, so 4 years, it was June 5th. For 4 years.
I was looking at the
here.
file with Mitch.
Yeah, so like
6 months ago.
You've got all of our properties. So
Yeah.
you sold, I think, three of our properties,
Yeah.
3 or 4, and then you got us this property and all that. So
Team effort though. Like I remember,
yeah.
I remember when it popped up, the idea, and why you were kind of looking to do it and everything too. So you guys bought the idea, or bought the property with the idea of doing what exactly?
yeah, so like Sam, I had my own home. You sold my house. I moved into her house. Her and I were looking at places to get married at.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow us to cater because they had some specific caterers, and we didn't like that idea.
Yeah.
And so we kind of put it on hold. Then we started looking for houses. You took us to one in St. Thomas.
I remember.
That was like 100 yards, and it was the edge of the lake, like the cliff, and there was like a burnt down barn on it.
Yeah.
And
Massive erosion issues too.
yeah,
I know.
Sam was just like, there was a burnt down barn, and she, as a joke, you know, and then you it was a joke that she brought up, and then you're like, oh yeah, you could do your thing. And then it kind of just was like, ha ha ha. And then I liked the house, but Sam didn't, and you're like, erosion, I would, you know, and so then we kept looking, and then Sam as a joke was
there
like,
was actually a spark from that showing.
there was kind of a spark, yeah.
Okay.
Because like Sam as a joke was just like, haha, we should find a property with a barn on. We can get married if we do a little touch-ups on it. And then maybe like we could like do weddings there, and maybe you build a kitchen and all that. And it was like, yeah, okay. And then I don't know, like a month, 6 weeks or something, we kind of brought the idea to you, and then it popped up. Sam found it. Sam sent it to you and was like, hey,
what do you think?
What do you think? And then we had a couple walkthroughs, and I think like 3 months or something.
It happened pretty quick, yeah.
Because they were moving out to like, it was like 10 hours north of North Bay.
Yeah.
They bought like 140 acres in the middle of nowhere, off the grid, and so they needed to get rid of it. And we wrote them a letter, and it kind of helped us cement it, because we're like, you've worked so hard on the property, you've built a beautiful place. We will continue that. We just want to make it our own.
Yeah.
And
and then when did the full venue plan kind of come into play, and explain what that is?
Kind of like when we were putting her house up for sale, it was like, okay, like what are we doing here?
Okay.
Like, okay, because like there's a full barn on there. Let's renovate it, and why don't we start our own business? And like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Okay, so when we came here with you and when we got it, we talked with them and we're like, hey, can we come here more often to check out things? So the whole process was like, okay, well, this building right here, okay, like, why don't we build that into the bar? And then we're like, okay, the barn, it needs a lot of work. So we're standing in manure and hay and dirt and mud. And so there was 2 rooms. It was a fully functioning animal barn. He had chickens in the one side that he had stopped about a year before they were prepped the house for sale. But then there was pigs in the one room, and we're like, okay, if we rip down all this and we'll rip down that second floor, and then we can redo this and do that. And then the patio, there was no patio here. It was all torn up concrete and mud. And we're like, well, rebuild a patio. And so then the kitchen that we have, it was his machine shop, one big room of just grease stains, and where he fixed lawnmowers and slaughtered his deer that he hunted. And we're like, okay, well, we can maybe like build a wall there and like put some cupboards, and maybe we can put an oven there, and maybe like a little island. And so when we got it, the week we got it, we had about 10, 15 people out here. We started ripping down all the walls. We had contractors out here to lift up the floor inside the barn 4 feet, to put all brand new concrete. We had the barns all painted from top to bottom, brand new big doors on every area you could imagine. Cement, brand new concrete in the bar, brand new concrete in the 4,000 square foot patio.
I think the lesson from hearing you explain the entire story, start to finish, in this is, and I deal with people that buy properties all the time, is so often people get paralyzed from doing anything. They never end up getting anywhere close to what they want to accomplish, versus coming in and saying, instead of waiting to have the perfect plan in place, you just start working on it, and it'll kind of turn itself into what it should be. And I bet you've pivoted a couple times in terms of like the types of clientele you want coming in. You're probably, the more specific you are, the more you're going to attract the right types of people. What do you do, like the pop-ups? Like, give me an idea of what that is.
So our main thing was, because of Spruce, it never was what I thought it was going to be. I still miss the restaurant scene.
Sure. There's an energy to that. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it takes the right people to work in that industry, you know. But I was like, I miss that, and so I was like, you know, if we did a pop-up that we were a restaurant for one night, I could do whatever I wanted.
Sure.
I could concentrate on the actual
set
food,
menu.
right? Yeah, and I don't have to worry about, oh God, we have, you know, 20,000 in payroll this month, and this and this and this and this.
You do it when you want to.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I'll do the menu, whatever I want to do, whatever I can get, and I can just focus on the food. That's it. And so after Sam's mom died, I was like, you know, I really want to do the pop-up, and I said to Sam, I want to name it Shirley's after her mom. And so we did one last year, and we were going to do more, but again...
What was the menu?
What was the menu? Yeah. It was 15 courses.
Oh, wow.
It was 50 seats. We only did 50 tickets. And it was... I love fine dining. I love modern techniques. And so I was like, I did the most fine dining thing I could do at that time. Mm-hmm. I've learned a lot in the last year. And so we were doing tableside dining. One of my favorite courses was... her mom used to have a pear tree in her backyard, and her mom would give me pears, and give me so many pears that at the end, I'm like Sam, I gotta have to throw some of these out because I don't know what the hell to do with them. And so
buy a goat or something.
Yeah, right. And so I was like, you know what? I grew up with the Dickie D. Yeah. Used to got the allowance, ran after that guy. That's funny. You know, and my favorite one was the baseball catcher's mitt. Sure. That was like a creamsicle with the ball in the middle, and it was a gumball. That was my favorite thing. And so I'm like, wonder how I can incorporate the Dickie D with pears. So I was like, you know what? Okay, let me think. So we bought this teal to represent one of the in-home chef colors. We got this teal cooler that had wheels and a little push thing. We got a bell for it. And I was like, let me take pears and let me make popsicles. And so we made these Pinot Grigio pear popsicles. We put them in bags. We vac packed, closed them.
Like an actual.
Just like you would get from a Dickie D. And so then we put some dry ice in the cooler. And then, you know.
And the effect of that, right?
Yeah, and so Sam was expediting. She's like, okay, table 4, Shirley's Popsicle Stand, which I think was like the 6th or 7th course. And so then I would fill up the cooler, and I would go up to the table, and as I'm walking up, I would ring the bell like the Dickie D, and then I would open it up, and the smoke would come out everywhere, and I would tell them kind of the story of like, this is Shirley's Popsicle Stand, and kind of just quickly tell them the little story behind it, and here you go, and give them a popsicle, and it was like it was a palate cleanser, and
the people's reactions when you were doing
people were just like, it brought out the kid out of them. You know, and I think nowadays people appreciate that because people are a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to food and experiences. I think people just want more of just going out to a restaurant and just having a dinner. It's like, okay, I could go anywhere. I could go to any restaurant and do that. It's more about the experience. And so I want to bring that to our pop-ups. I bring that to the in-home stuff. Even the weddings we do here, it's not just, a stuffed chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans. And so
what's the cheapest thing I could buy to make the most money, right?
Yeah, right. And I, even during COVID when we were doing things here, I'm like, well, people have already signed contracts for their menu, for their wedding. We're not upping the price now. I'm not going to go back and, hey, sorry, but that beef now costs me a lot more money. I'm like, it is what it is. Yeah. We're not in it for the money. It's not about that. And so, so with the pop-up, it's more about doing what I love and bringing that experience and that feeling that people get of like, oh my God, I remember the Dickie D. Yeah. My dad's 71, and he's like, well, I remember 5-cent candies, and he always brings up going to the theater, and it was, $1 to take the bus and go to the theater and see a movie and popcorn and a Coke.
I feel like you're going to do a popcorn night or a movie night.
Well, so we've talked about doing family night here.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Getting an actual pull-down projector, doing family dinner of like pasta, simple things like that, and then doing snacks.
I'm hungry. I stopped talking about food. I came to the wrong place for this episode.
And so, it's all about that. So like our first pop-up this year is going to be August.
Okay.
And
I think I may be here in town for that.
I'll make sure I'll do it when you are in town.
Well, if I can get on the list, hopefully. But we'll see.
And so, it's just, it allows me to do everything I've always wanted to do. Sure. And, it takes the right partner that Sam allows me.
Sure. She's been a rock for you too. Like I've known you pre-Sam, I know you post-Sam, you've known me pre-Shannon, you know me post-Shannon. I'm a different person, right? Like same thing with you. I think having somebody like that as an anchor, it drives you to be better. Now you have a kid and the next phase too, right? And
it's like, even during COVID, she was the one, she was our provider, working full time, and I didn't really work. It gave me time to work on the property and all that, but I wasn't bringing anything in. I might have done a catering here and there because obviously going into people's homes, there was nothing happening. But her not allowing me, but you know what I mean, of
the steadiness. Well, Shannon does the same thing for me, right? Where guys like you and I think are chaos if our energy is not pointed in the right direction. And like sometimes I've pushed back against things that Shannon saw in me as opportunities. And then after I was like, oh yeah, like you pointed me in the right direction. I didn't want to go in that direction. Then I went that direction, and it was actually, I'm happier now because of it. But it's only because that person's there and truly does want what's best for you, right?
Yeah, and she could probably say a few other words,
sure.
choice words.
Good too. I'm making it sound real nice.
about me and the directions I go and how, how I change every 2 seconds of like, let's do this, or that's just how I am.
But I think there's also a balance to that with them where having that piece as well to be willing to try something completely different and evolve to that next phase of business there's a fluidity and kind of a funness to life, right?
Yeah, and I'm not always right. My God, like
Yeah.
I tell all the staff, I'm like, I might say go right, but if it's better to go left and then right or whatever, okay, sure, sure, no problem. Let's do it.
I've said the same thing with Nico on a bunch of shoots. Like, you talk about seeing ingredients. I was thinking of that property we just shot. Like, I see certain properties and I'm like, oh, I'm excited to like do something with this, right? It's the exact same thing. But getting people around you that you can then give that creative freedom to be like, hey, this is what I think because I'm looking like 3 to 5 years ahead. You guys are in it now. You tell me, like, is this sequence of events the proper one for what we're doing, or should we make adjustments? And when you can start building that confidence and bright people around you, then it's not all on your shoulders, where as an entrepreneur, sometimes a lot of people watching this came up where it was just them. And they always feel that sense of urgency. And I think you're gonna break through once you breathe and really get that behind you and then start looking in front of you too, right? So I appreciate the time you made for the podcast today. How can people connect with you just so that they can make a one-on-one connection?
The inhomechef.ca. We have a brand new website.
INN?
No, one N.
One N.
Yeah,
right.
so it was
I asked you that.
NN when I first started, and everyone was like, "You're an idiot. You're not an inn. Like you don't own a building."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, it's different. I'm cool." And that blew up in my face, and I'm like, "Yeah, I think everyone's right." So it's
inhomechef.ca.
Yeah, so it's www.theinhomechef.ca. We're getting back onto social media. We have a whole big thing we're planning in the first week of July.
Okay.
And look for us out on social media, new website. Also look at us, Primpini Event Co., which is obviously our event space here. So check us out on both those. So thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure, man.
Always a pleasure. You'll be back on again too. All the links will be in the show notes below. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and make sure to reach out to Tommy and thank him for the episode. We'll catch you on the next one.